For more resources, visit rymonline.org.
The Local Youth Worker is a daily podcast that's centered on 5 questions each week. Ranging from the practical to the professional, we're looking for answers to the questions you're asking. Whether you're in full-time, part-time, or even volunteer youth ministry, this podcast is for you.
Hello everyone, this is John Parrott, and you're listening to The Local Youth Worker, a daily podcast presented by Reformed Youth Ministries. If you've listened before, we typically interview youth workers and we ask them some basic 5 questions, but today I've got Reverend John Stone with us, and we'll ask him some more pastoral type questions. John, welcome to the show.
Good to be on the show. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, thanks for making the time. John, I know you were the RUF minister at Belhaven College at the time, right?
Yeah.
It's Belhaven University.
Yes.
And then University of Tennessee.
In Knoxville. That's correct.
Yeah. Did you do any youth work prior to that?
You know, I almost did youth work prior to that. When I was in seminary, I got invited to come be the part-time youth pastor at PCA Church in Godfrey, Illinois.
Okay.
And 2 weeks after I started the Bible study, the pastor resigned because his mother had health issues.
Oh, man.
And so I became the pastor of that church while I was in seminary.
Wow.
So I went right past it. Yeah, my opportunity youth ministry was lost to like a full-time gig that I really didn't need when I was in seminary.
Wow. So 2 weeks of youth ministry and then senior pastor right after that.
That's right. Well, I mean, I was the stated supply. I think their old guy was a great pastor. He's really faithful. I'm not sure he was that lively in the pulpit. And so they had a young seminarian single who told stories. And I think they liked the change of pace, so they just kept me there for about 2.5 years. Yeah.
Wow. Okay.
It's crazy bad experience. Don't do that. That's not the way to do it. I mean, I learned a ton, but
I'm sure.
Yeah.
All right. So look, before we get to the first question, why don't you just tell us your wife, family, all that stuff, and what you're doing?
Married to Marissa, who grew up in Tupelo, Mississippi, a graduate of Ole Miss. Got her master's from there too in English. And we got married after I finished seminary. Went to Covenant Seminary after matriculating from Clemson. Go Tigers. We beat Alabama. And
we'll have to edit that out.
Yeah, we got married, and we have 3 daughters. We have Sarah, who's 21, and he'll be a senior at UT in nursing, and Catherine, who's a sophomore at both UT Knoxville, who's in animal science. And then Mary Simpson will be a senior in high school, West High School in Knoxville. She's actually here this week. So 3 daughters. We lived in Knoxville for 20 years. After I was on campus at Belhaven and UT in Knoxville for 11 years, I've been the assistant coordinator, which would sort of be the same thing as the vice president for RUF National, not just a region, but the whole thing for the last 14 and a half years. And I'm now transitioning into a new job. So in a lot of ways, you know, I come at this podcast today as a father who's watched his children navigate youth group.
Oh, yeah.
We've been in 2 churches. We were in a mega church, Cedar Springs, and now we've been in a church plant for 10 years. So we sort of had the really
both ends of the spectrum there.
Yeah, and just had tons of churches want me to interview, like give me names for youth pastors and all this because of my connection to RUF and knowing all these people.
Yeah. That's good. Well, like I said at the outset, we typically ask 5 basic questions of youth workers, but yours, as you just said, are going to be a little different. So the first one is, what's some advice you would give youth workers, specifically in reference to their interaction with senior pastors, things they should do or shouldn't do to just kind of foster those relationships better?
Gosh, I got a lot of advice on this one, and I will tell you right now, I'm nonlinear. So some of this will be around the corner.
Please do it.
I think any young youth pastor, whether he's been to seminary or not, but I would lean into those who've been to seminary hearing this answer more than those who have not, is you have to listen to your senior pastor. I think just, one of the benefits of being in RUF and working in 50 states and in so many presbyteries is you recognize so many youth ministry is just frustrating from an organizational standpoint for churches. Because I think churches, and I understand this is what my church wants. We want somebody reaching out to the high schools. We want somebody reaching out to the kids who come to church. And we want those reaching out to the kids who come to church who don't come to church. And it's just easy for the pastor and the youth pastor to get crossways. I realize it's easy for a pastor and assistant pastor. But, the youth worker is really critical to the pastor because he's dealing with the children of the church.
Oh, yeah.
And when you don't make those children happy, the pastor's going to take heat. So, you really need to come into any job listening to the pastor. And I would say, even as you interview, make sure in a good way, that you sit with the pastor alone and say, what is your vision? What do you want? What is the history here? Because I think figuring out, this may be an answer to another question, but figuring out what's really can be accomplished in the youth group of any particular church is the challenge. And if you've got a veteran pastor and you're a new youth guy, that means there's a youth guy before you.
Yeah.
Who either got fired or went to seminary or both. And I don't know why. I think it's easy because you're dealing with the youth to sort of see the pastor as the problem.
He's just kind of getting in the way. If he gets out of the way, and I can just do
a little bit. Well, he doesn't understand youth, and he's 47, and these kids are 14, and they Snapchat and they Instagram, and he doesn't. That's normal. But it's easy for those two relationships. We send you out to really get to know youth culture. And he really knows adult culture. It's just really easy for those two to get not on different pages and not doing different philosophy of ministry, but just to be two perspectives on what the church needs. And so the youth pastor has got to listen to the pastor.
Okay.
It could be in your church, and you'll figure this out. Really, you got to listen to some particular ruling elder who's really into youth ministry, right? But it's somebody you got to listen to. My advice is listen to them. My second piece of advice is you don't know what you don't know.
That's right.
You just don't know what you don't know. So you don't understand the pressure he's under. You have a ton of pressure as a youth pastor. You have a ton of pressure. And he has a ton of pressure, but you don't know what that pressure is. You don't. Don't assume you know what he's thinking. Don't assume you know what he's going through. Be humble enough to admit that you don't know what you don't know.
Yeah, that's good advice. And I know some friends that are in some churches where they have an excellent relationship with the senior pastor, some where they feel like they don't really, that the relationship's kind of non-existent, that they try to maybe pursue that relationship, but the senior pastor kind of keeps them at a distance. So I guess some advice for some youth workers that do sincerely want to be mentored by the senior pastor, want to pursue the senior pastor, but they also don't want to, just annoy him and get on his nerves. So what's some advice of them trying to pursue that relationship, but also respecting the senior pastor, knowing he's got a lot on his plate? Just some practical advice how to pursue that relationship or deepen it.
Well, that's a great question. I think the first thing I'd say to that is, not every senior pastor can mentor people. So not every senior pastor is the same.
Yeah.
So generally in ministry, if you're successful, you work from one of, seems to me that most of us in ministry, whether we're in church, parachurch, but who do ministry, either are upfront people, large group people, or we're small group people. We just really know how to run small groups and do community. Or we're really one-on-one, sort of counselor, discipleship people. Yeah. Nobody's all three. Don't lie to yourself. No one's all three. Well, you may have a senior pastor who's not great at one-on-one. He's great in the pulpit. People really grow under his preaching. And he may organize the church well. He may feel like he's got the 12 disciples he can mentor, or the session and the diaconate. And he just doesn't have time for you. And that's just where people are.
Yeah.
So you can't expect, even though it's a legitimate longing, that every church you take, everybody you work with can mentor you. It's okay to want it, But you just got to be prepared to realize he can't give it.
Mm-hmm. That's good advice.
And so I think sometimes you'll end up getting mentored by a 55-year-old woman who's married in the church who's run the youth group for 15 years, right? And she's just been around the block, or her husband, and they're the ones that sort of know how the church works and help you. But in my own job, when I was over, especially the larger the church gets, in some ways, and I don't know if this illustration will work for everybody, it's sort of like being a college football coach. No college football coach any longer knows everything going on. I was watching an interview with Clemson, who was in the national championship last year. The defensive coordinators asked a question about the starting right defensive tackle that everybody in America knows about. He's like, he tweaked his ankle last week, and his response was, he tweaked his ankle last week? Like, he's the linebacker and the defensive coordinator. He didn't know he tweaked his ankle, right? They subbed him out. They got his ankle taped. He got back in. He's calling plays. You got to own that, especially in bigger churches, you got to look multiple places for mentoring. Now, if you get it, give yourself to it.
Yeah.
And make sure that if you want to be mentored, if he says, look, I can play golf with you on Friday and you don't play golf, pick up a pair of sticks or just go walk with him, right?
Drive his car for him.
Yeah, figure out how to fit into his life. Because, again, I think it is incredibly difficult, and we're all there at 27 to 37, to understand what 47 to 57-year-olds face. Or even as a 27-year-old facing what a 35-year-old with his fourth kid halfway through a church plant faces.
Oh, yeah.
And so I just don't know that you can expect the mentoring in my life. As I look back, I'm 52. There's a lot more to live. It's just been in strange places. Just found good advice, good leadership, like in crazy, weird places.
Yeah, that's good. I mean, that's helpful. You talking about the importance of the youth worker to be on the same page with the senior pastor, to be humble, to know they don't have it all figured out. And if they're not able to, get that one-on-one mentorship from the senior pastor, to find it in some way, and to not necessarily get offended by it, because everyone does have their gifts. And sometimes, like you said, the senior pastors aren't going to be able to do the one-on-one ministry or have the time to do it. I mean, if they're in church planning, they obviously have a lot on their plate, or a large group or a large member church. So that's helpful advice.
Always remember that the senior pastor has at home children and a tired wife, and he's not making enough money.
Amen to that. That's good advice. Thanks, Sean.